Let's talk about a massive challenge faced by marketers today that could be keeping you from the results that you deserve. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. The big problem today is that there are so many channels to reach out to prospects and customers in a marketplace. In fact, there are so many channels that the customers themselves are spread all over the place. Just think about this, for example. If you have a podcast, you can syndicate it on the social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Telegram, all these other channels. You can also syndicate that podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher. There's hundreds of different channels. That is a problem because it could mean that any one channel only has 5 or 10 people on it. Could have 500 or 1,000 people on it. But unless you have some kind of universal desire, your client has some universal presentation, you will not get traction being on just one of these platforms. So if you're Joe Rogan and you're on Spotify and you can get enough publicity, yes, your podcast would be popular on Spotify. But again, there are people that don't even know what Spotify is because there are so many choices in the marketplace. Now, as a marketer, what do you do to reach buyers in a marketplace? Because here's the thing. If I said video log instead of podcast, there are thousands of places to syndicate video. If I said article, there are thousands of publications to syndicate articles. So here's what we're looking at. You have 2 key factors you must understand. The number one thing is, where is your ideal audience right now? Now, this assumes you did a customer avatar, that you've researched your customers, that you know every little detail about the customer to know what kinds of platforms they're going to be on, because ultimately they may not be on any of these platforms. I know the type of customer that I serve, they tend not to be on any of the platforms because they're busy working and they're busy doing the things that matter. So I could just send them a letter and that's faster because I know who they are. But again, which platforms are your customers using? I like to think about all these different platforms as channels. And it's no different than if you were doing a space advertisement in a newspaper or a magazine. Which magazines are your customers reading? Okay? This is very important because now we can focus our effort on the channels. This is number 2. Focus on the channels, 2 or 3 of them, that your customers are most likely to be on, and measure it carefully. That's what I mean by focus on a channel. If you're going to be on Apple Podcasts, you're going to measure your analytics on Apple Podcasts. You're going to go and determine audience information. You're going to track the links. Now, fortunately today, there is some marketing automation that allows you to publish in one place and then it automatically goes to these other platforms through syndication, through RSS feeds, through whatever. Now, that's just content marketing, whether it's video, audio, or written word. That's just those channels. Again, so many channels to choose from. If you can, choose a platform or a resource that allows you to syndicate automatically, but you're still going to focus on 1 or 2 channels because this is what's important. Some of these channels will give you very detailed demographics and are tied to advertising systems that once you flag somebody is interested in what your content is, you can now do paid advertising for them. I know. A lot of folks are trying to do free advertising, organic advertising. And if this was 1990s, that would work. I had a website that had 500 unique visitors a day. I used the formulas, some of which I've highly modified since then, but I've used the formulas to measure metrics, to do the audience demographics, to understand who's there. And I was at one time able to get 10 websites that had between 500 unique visitors a day and 1,000 unique visitors a day. Life was beautiful. And then the search engines did an algorithm update. And HTML5 came out, or HTML4 came out, or I changed the publishing platform, or I moved website. All these things broke. The one thing that didn't break, though, is having a lot of postal addresses and telephone numbers and email addresses of my prospects. And I recommend the same thing. I've seen it with clients. Something will change where you go from all kinds of channels to none of the channels working. And so you have to, again, where's the audience most likely to be located? And they'll change. I don't know if you know what MySpace is, but there used to be something called MySpace. There, in the business world, it used to be Rise. Probably every platform I've mentioned, even YouTube, will eventually go away. So again, who is your audience and where does your audience live? And next, focus on a few channels, one to three channels. And I like 3 to 5 channels is best. If you just start with one to get you going, that's fine. That should be your website. But again, 3 channels, 3 to 5 channels, focus on those, measure, perform, because again, once you get a certain number of people on a platform, you can start getting better demographics. You can start doing lead generation tests. You can start making offers. So YouTube, for example, once you have 100 subscribers on YouTube, you start getting pretty good analytics. You start seeing what other channels do they watch? How did they find your channel? There's a lot of good details there. But when you get 1,000 subscribers on a channel, you start seeing huge, massive audience matching details that you can then promote a video and get a better target on your ideal or prospective customer. Another example is if there's a magazine or a message board or a forum that your customers are really at, if you do 5 articles in that platform, you're more likely to know which content topics are most appealing to that particular audience. So I know a lot of marketers want to build something and then, kind of splatter it all over the internet. And hey, there's 50 different podcast channels. I'm going to be on all 50 podcast channels and I'm going to create new content and I'm going to just drop. Okay, now that works sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. There's also another challenge in the internet world, and this is why I'm always encouraging you to get out of the internet world and to use telephone seminars, use webinars, use direct mail, use prospect newsletters, is because these platforms change. So you might build up 1,000 subscribers in YouTube, and now all of a sudden YouTube doesn't like your content anymore, and they shut you down. Now, the good thing about YouTube or Google Analytics on your website is that you are cookieing customers, and they're getting put into these different segments. And now you can go back to the pay-per-click networks and advertise directly to those segments. But again, if your content has been banned and it gets, that ban spreads, you might not be able to use Google pay-per-click. You might not be able to use Bing pay-per-click. So again, you want to be capturing their email address. So the goals really ought to be generating leads, making sales, and then making repeat sales. Because once you have a repeat sale, you now have a model of a buyer. So let me summarize this a little bit for you. There are a lot of platforms out there, but if you know who your customer is and you know where they live on or offline, you can now put things in front of them to generate leads and then make offers to those leads. So that's a 2-step approach. But as you generate leads, you're going to get a better profile of who is a lead. If you're cultivating the platforms that are tied to larger pay-per-click networks that have advertising, you can get to a point where you have 100 or even 1,000 names off of a platform, and now you can start doing target marketing on paid platforms. You can take out a space advertisement. You can take out a banner ad. Banner ads do work if you're working them correctly. You can take out pay-per-click. You can do a promotion on a post that converts well. I don't know if there was a guy, Ty Lopez, that every internet marketing video, there was a Ty Lopez commercial in front of it of the same topic as the video that you were trying to go for. And essentially what he did was he did target marketing both on the audience and the topic to get his ads out there on the YouTube network. And he built for himself millions of subscribers and a massive business. Now, it doesn't matter what you think of Ty Lopez. The strategy works well, and you can use it too. If you can get somebody to your website, you can tag them with a cookie for Facebook, tag them with a cookie for LinkedIn's advertising platform, tag them with a cookie for the Google advertising platform, for the Bing advertising platform. If you do it on the thank you page after the lead generation, So not on your general page, because you're going to get a lot of traffic that's not even, they're just accidentally showed up on your website. If you put it on the thank you page behind the lead opt-in form, you're going to be able to then start audience matching on all these advertising platforms. Now, again, it really depends on your customer. A lot of my folks are not on Facebook. A lot of my folks are not on, well, they're on LinkedIn, but they're not necessarily active on LinkedIn. They got a profile. They're more likely to be on a copywriting message board. They're more likely to be in an advertising forum. They're more likely to be actually working all day, and I need to send them a letter in the mail. But again, I wouldn't know that if I wasn't generating leads, if I wasn't using platforms that had good analytics, and I wasn't testing my ideas using either the topic testing methods that we talk about or using decision matrices on the stats on your analytics pages, or just in general having your analytics set up correctly. So I hope this has been helpful. It's really important, no matter how many platforms are out there, how many new platforms come out, and no matter how much people scream, Instagram's the greatest thing, Telegram, this, that, what. You just need to pick 3, one of which will be your own website. And this applies whether you're doing it for yourself or doing it for your customers. Your own website is going to be generate leads and making sales. But everything else around it is about understanding that buyer, cultivating that buyer, and developing a relationship with that buyer based on their interests and concerns. You do this again by measuring and testing in these channels. And after you get 3 solid channels that bring you customer day after day, you want to start adding the 4th one, the 5th one, the 6th one. You could get to 10 or 15 different channels that work like clockwork. And then that way, when one of these channels disappears or has a lawsuit, Parler got shut down. If you're selling to a conservative audience and you are relying on Parler and it just shut down, then you are stuck. In my case, like I said, I had 500 unique visitors a day. I was supporting a more general small business owner audience, and my primary traffic was organic traffic. It was organic traffic from Google. And when Google changed its algorithm, my primarily article site, so it primarily had articles, people would come in and read the article, I'd generate the lead, then I'd make an offer to them after I generate the lead. That whole thing just fell apart. Now, fortunately, I would build mailing lists and I would send high ticket offers by mail to the individuals, and that gave me plenty of new business. But it was nice having websites with 1,000 unique visitors a day. So 10 websites, each with 500 unique visitors a day, is 5,000 unique visitors a day. And I've actually used the same analytics on all the sites, so I could tell that it was overall 5,000 unique visitors a day on different segmented topics. We could talk about that at another time, but ultimately vaporized all in a couple of days. And then I migrated some websites and I just wrecked it all up. Now I barely get any traffic to my websites. But again, I got 17,000 people on a mailing list. While you might not have received any mail from me, there are people getting postcards and letters. There's people that get email from me. There's people that have paid to be on my newsletters. This model works, and you can make it work for yourself. Now, I encourage you to make it work for yourself first. Use this to get copywriting clients. But the framework of what I've described, very clear audience, understanding where the audience already lives, going into a few of those platforms with specific topic tests or content tests that are designed to generate leads, and then paying to promote those because you've got a good measure of what works and what doesn't. Ultimately, that it doesn't matter the industry, it always works. It's just, if you had a room full of people who wanted to buy what you want and you knew their desires and needs, you will sell something. It's just the way it works. But anyway, you can start this with your copywriting work, with your marketing work, and then you can go straight to doing this for your clients. The results are consistent and they address the mistakes that I've made in the past, which is simply having too few channels that worked. This will allow you to pay more to get customers because you'll know that if one channel fails, you still got the other channels. It starts building a house list so you know that you can follow up. It's a powerful system. Now, again, I gave it to you in an abridged form because it's a podcast. If you have questions about this or anything else I cover, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips. You visit www.adbriefings.co.uk. Go to the contact page, contact me with your questions, and I'll be sure to answer your questions in the next podcast or another episode. I will definitely write you back if you leave your contact details. But again, the big problem we're facing today, too many channels. None of these channels individually have enough traffic in them, so we need to build a portfolio. And then that portfolio isn't about traffic, it's about generating leads and about making offers to those leads. So ultimately you can make repeat purchases. Customers come back time and time again. I'm looking forward to your success stories. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips.